Hi, I'm Daniel, and before the episode starts, I want to briefly talk to you about the Garden Outreach Project, a WCF program focused on putting faith into action. Our mission is to inspire and support Christadelphians in North America to share Christ's love through outreach initiatives. This is done by facilitating national and local outreach activities, supplying resources, and providing funds to help brothers and sisters serve those in need. For example, in 2020, over 40 ecclesial groups participated in our Bags of Love initiative, which saw over 800 sleeping bags distributed to shelters and those without a home. If you, your ecclesia, or CYC want to learn more and get involved with our latest initiative, please visit our website at www.thegardenoutreach.org. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at The Garden Outreach for the latest news and encouragement. And now, here's the show.
Welcome back to A Little Faith. I am here with Bill Yake. How you doing, Bill?
Very good, Levi. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, nice to talk to you too. I wanted to get together today to talk about kind of your story in distributing ecclesial news. And the context of that is because the WCF has recently kind of taken over this project in a way. Now we call it the Vineyard Voice, and basically it's a newsletter from WCF that sends out ecclesial updates, different things. But this is actually kind of really born out of your work for years and years, kind of sharing news from different ecclesias. So how did that start for you?
Well, if memory serves me correct, it started either in the late 90s or early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
This is before social media. So I think MySpace and Facebook came around 2004. So it was definitely before then. So there was like an awkward period there where people had a difficult time sharing news. So I thought, you know what? I'll just go old school here and just do it by email and just share on an ad hoc basis news either from individuals and or ecclesias or initiatives like Onesimus, Williamsburg Conference, etc. So it was really sort of born out of necessity. From my perspective, I thought, I got a challenge here in terms of keeping people connected. So that was sort of the genesis and the catalyst of my initiative. And again, I took it upon myself to do this. I thought, there's a need here. So I didn't necessarily have to go through a committee or something to get it done. I just thought, we'll see how this plays out. And if people find it helpful or useful, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So did you make, so it starts in the early 2000s, you're saying kind of email is also becoming popular, I imagine around that time, I guess mid 90s. And you're kind of in a way replacing, that for years and years, there's publications like magazines or ecclesial newsletters. But did you have kind of a formal beginning? So it sounded like you had kind of an intention, like, you know what, I think I'm going to start sharing this, or did it grow out of something else?
Well, I fortunately have a fair number of contacts. It sort of grew out of people just reaching out, hey, can you share this with some people, this information? Right. Since I had a pretty extensive email list,
okay,
I just started with the distribution. So that was sort of the start of it. So it was nothing really formal. And so it was pretty organic in the sense of just on an as-needed basis. So it wasn't structured per se, at least initially. So that's how the ball got rolling there.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like you weren't doing it as a member of Arlington, right? Sometimes in other models, there'll be ecclesias with a recording brother and they'll, share an announcement from their ecclesia, but you were doing it really specifically as an individual, Bill Yake.
Yeah. So I'll tell you this, and this was really sort of the main driver. There's a lot of good things with putting announcements in magazines, etc., whether it's the Tidings, Advocate, so on and so forth. The problem is it's the lag period. Yeah. Depending on the scope and the urgency of the message or the announcement or the news.
Right.
If you do it by print, it's not going to get in print for at least 2-3 months.
Right.
So if someone wants a prayer request for someone who's got cancer or has been in a serious accident, 3 months is way too long. So there's a lack of immediacy there or urgency. And it sort of just dies on the vine before it sort of gets
Right.
out. So that was sort of, I think, what spurred it. I thought, okay, you know what, I can do this pretty quickly, as opposed to just going through the channels of just doing it through a magazine, etc.
How quick would it be, as an example? Someone says, yeah, there's been an accident and so, we need prayers for so-and-so. How soon would that happen?
It was real time, basically. So it would be within a couple hours, depending
Yeah.
if you're sending me a note from the West Coast or England or Australia, depending where you're sending it from. So sometimes there would be a lag period there of me waking up in the morning. But generally speaking, it would be within 8 hours.
And this is always allowed for you professionally, right? You were able to take time out in the middle of the day if you had to send something.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting.
I would just do it at lunch hour usually.
Yeah. Huh. So did you feel it grow, or what was that like? Maybe because it was I guess it's almost about 20 years you were doing it for.
Yeah. So initially, and I'd say for the first 5-6 years, it definitely, I could tell it filled a void. People were profoundly thankful and grateful. And the reason I did it initially is some people had a couple brothers or sisters or friends who were very sick.
Mm-hmm.
I'd send a note out saying, hey, look, just keep this person in your thoughts and prayers.
Mm-hmm.
So for those people who were affected by it, either directly or indirectly, they found it extremely gratifying, in so much as it gave them a sense of a greater community. Because depending where you live, in Topeka or Lawrence, Kansas or something, you just feel sort of isolated and alone.
Yeah.
This gave them a sense of a greater community and connectedness with other brothers and sisters.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's kind of even more effective on the faith of people who might not be attached to large ecclesias or anything like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Did you ever formalize it into a email program, or was it always just your personal email?
So eventually I hooked up with WCF. They had a product called Contact, which was basically a blast email service. It was largely for marketing, but we were able to sort of jury rig it and use it for ecclesial mail. So it had more of a standardized template and format.
Right.
But the one thing sort of missing or lacking, again, I just sort of did it on an ad hoc basis. So it would be a couple times a week. It might be once or twice every 2 months. So it's just dependent on the need. And everything arose from that. That was driving it.
Yeah. Do you have any idea how big that email list got at its largest?
At the top, the high end, it was about between 800 and 1,000.
Right.
You could well imagine, emails are pretty transient in the sense you'd get about a 10% rollover in a year where they'd bounce back, et cetera. I'd say on average, it was about 850.
Yeah, that's interesting. Was there ever times where you chose not to share something?
Yeah, that's a good question. And here's what I mean by that. I learned the hard way because a brother or sister in meeting A sent me some information about a sister who was going in for surgery for cancer. So I sent a note and said, hey, your prayers would be welcome for Sister Karen. I did not know at the time that there were certain sensitivities there. The family didn't appreciate that news being shared. So I learned in hindsight, unless I get the news directly from the family or a designated representative on the family's behalf, I wouldn't send the information out until I had it vetted. So I sort of got burned that way, and I totally appreciate and understood where the brother was coming from regarding his wife. So,
right, yeah, that's interesting. Can you think of any specific times or memories that you felt it was especially impactful sending out the news?
Well, again, it was largely for, and I'm generalizing here, but there was a brother in Alabama. His wife was sick, and he was in a very small ecclesial in isolation, and he just felt sort of cut off from the community at large. He was extremely grateful and thoughtful about the services provided. It put him in touch with brothers or friends he hadn't seen or heard from in many years. So that certainly resonated with me, that this filled that need in the sense of connecting people who sort of were out of touch or on the fringes, if you will, of organized ecclesial activities.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I know we when I in my involvement on the Operation Essence Committee, we used your list a couple times for fundraising, and it was always very impactful.
Yeah. And I will add to that, and again, I was very kind of reticent about doing that outside an organizational framework. So for individuals, but a couple times where we did do that, I was overwhelmed by sort of the response that people pitched in. A couple brothers had health-related issues. They didn't have appropriate or adequate insurance. So through some fund, whether it was GoFundMe or whatever, people were able to step in and fill the void and mollify what would have been a very difficult situation in terms of financial bankruptcy, et cetera. So that was very gratifying to see people sort of step up where the need existed.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And that there's so much of that is kind of some of our basic requirements of each other as, as God's children, as brothers and sisters.
So to that end, it'd be very difficult. It'd be awkward to do that for, say, a newsletter that comes out every couple of months, because there's a certain immediacy there. Like, hey, I need help right now, as opposed to, how it is the wheel sometimes of organizations, like, oh yeah, we'll get to that in 3 months.
Right.
Person needs help today. So that was the strength of that model, was the immediacy of sort of engaging and galvanizing support.
Interesting. Yeah, I think there was something to the flexibility that you had as an individual too. I think where we are now, it's these kind of extra ecclesial organizations like WCF and Tidings are kind of two examples. They can be impersonal sometimes. I found.
It's no fault of theirs. That's just the nature of organizations.
Yeah, you get an email from whatever, you don't exactly know who it's from, but your email always said Bill Yake, which is interesting.
I don't know if that was a good thing or not.
Yeah, well, it's just it personalized it, I guess.
Because the joke was this. Unfortunately, in the beginning, a lot of times I'd get these requests from people who were sick or their loved one had passed away. So the joke was, oh yeah, it's the death report from Bill Yake.
Yeah.
Or I felt like it was analogous to the CDC's morbidity and mortality weekly report. So in hindsight, the thing that I should have been more cognizant of this was broadening the scope of it and soliciting people to share good news,
right,
as opposed to just the sick list.
Yeah.
Because it got a little, what's the word? Wearisome, I think, for some people.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what inspired you to stop? I mean, it was 20 years, so you could just, get tired of doing something, but was there any other reasons that you...
Yeah, the primary reason was sort of the growth of social media. So prior to me doing this, when Facebook and MySpace didn't exist, there really wasn't a universal platform for people to share news like this in a universal, quick kind of way. So consequently, once Facebook and some other similar products came out, there was no longer a need for me to do that. So understandably, the request dropped off pretty significantly with that. In other words, because people had their own chat groups, their own email lists. And so typically in these things, people, it's sort of concentric circles. So the people nearest and dearest to them, they're already on Facebook with them. So the word would get out pretty quickly. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. It's a kind of there would be like the GoFundMe page you talk about, that might be on Facebook instead of on an email chain.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Now, were there any other kind of ways do you think it impacted your own faith or inspired you? Or
well, overall, the thing that was, I think, helpful, that resonated well with me was, I think, the personal nature of people's challenges and trials in life. I know it's a little awkward for some people to sort of reach out. And so what I found out sort of behind the scenes, and you never really find this vis-a-vis through an email, but how much it meant to people, how much it strengthened them, how much it was meaningful to them. So I found that very helpful and encouraging to me personally.
Yeah, that seeing the effect of how it would positively uplift people would probably be very inspiring.
So sort of the biblical mandate, if you will, centered around 1 Corinthians 12:26, suffer with those who suffer, rejoice with those who rejoice. I think I did a pretty good job in the first part. I wish in hindsight I did a little more in the second part. But the point was this, I think our mandate, Jesus says, people know you're my disciples by your love one for another. I thought, well, this is a good vehicle to illustrate that and to give people opportunity to exercise that.
Yeah.
And so I think that was the most powerful, principle at play there.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like, communication is so key. This happens, at the micro level of our ecclesias too. That you can't help your brother or sister unless you know that they need help. And
so I would add one thing to that. The second part was the biblical mandate to encourage one another.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on the situation, there were some pretty serious situations, as you could well imagine.
Yeah.
To the scope and the intensity of people's illness. That's a dark place to be if you're a caretaker, or if you watch a loved one pass away or struggle through disease. So people need encouragement at every step along the way. And to your point, unless you're aware of it, you can't help people. So that was, I think, the main thing there was enabling people and giving them the facility to encourage one another.
Right. It's interesting, your inspiration to kind of fill this void. I think it's interesting because our community is unique and odd in a way that there is no central authority. Like, there was no one who was doing this already.
Right.
But it is a necessary service as much as we can to, like you're saying, encourage and uplift each other. But yeah, so you just kind of did that. So, no one asked you to, I guess, which is unique.
So I think, to your point, you don't have to wait for someone to approach you, a committee, et cetera. If you see a need, step up to the plate and do it. And so I don't know if that's naive or what, but I thought, hey, there's a void here. So I thought, I'll go ahead and do it until I hear otherwise.
Yeah. There's this really awesome scene from Chariots of Fire. I don't know if you've seen the movie Chariots of Fire. This phrase has stuck with me, and they are deciding what to do about the race, that basically the central race in the movie Chariots of Fire, which is a run. And there's this impassioned speech by one of the guys where he says, "We are the committee." Like, there's no one else who's going to make this decision. We have to make this decision.
Yeah. I
think that's a really important idea for us as believers in this community that we're in. There's just very often there's no one to tell you to do something, right? You're the one who should do it.
And to your point, I learned by trial and error what works, what doesn't work.
Yeah.
So it was pretty fluid. So it just like anything in life, you just think, lessons learned here. Like, I'm going to tweak this or calibrate this or that. So that was the good thing about it. It was, since it was just me, I could easily pivot pretty quickly and change.
Yeah. Have you missed it at all? Or you're still kind of involved, I guess, with the new brand of it?
Well, like I said, at least what I was doing, I think it had run its course.
Yeah.
Insofar as Facebook and some other things were filling the need. However, I will give kudos to WCF. I think the Vineyard Voice will fill a void. I think there's ample opportunity there to sort of modify it and customize it as the need may be. Like I said before, mine was largely driven by personal need.
Right.
I think going forward, there's lots of opportunities there to take this in any direction that WCF would like to take it.
Mm-hmm.
I like a couple things they've done already in terms of getting correspondence. It's hard to keep up with 20 to 40,000 people. Most people typically know about 200.
Yeah.
So it's hard to keep your arms wrapped around something like that. I think if I was them, I think what I would do is have certain categories, like 5 categories of different types of news.
Mm-hmm.
So something doesn't, my fear would be something falling through the cracks and you sort of just have an imbalanced news sharing service. So that will take some forethought and some meaningful consideration of to what type of information or news would you share or is appropriate to share.
Right. Interesting. Cool. Well, thanks, Bill. Yeah, thanks for this time. And I do hope that anyone who's listening to this is inspired to, to fill in a gap if you see one, but also if you want to get involved with the Vineyard Voice and help share the news, both like you're saying, both for people who need help, but also encouragement for our brothers and sisters. Please go to the website, wcfoundation.org. Do you have any other thoughts, Bill, that we want to put on the podcast here?
I just echo what you just said a few minutes ago. Ultimately, things do not get done unless people step up to the plate.
Yeah.
You can't wait for the golden invitation, like, hey, Levi or Bill, can you guys work on this? We've got a lot of creative capacity and thoughtful people out there. There's just so many needs out there. So again, don't be bashful or reticent about thinking, you know what, I think as a community, we're missing this or we're missing that. So raise up the flagpole with your friends, a sounding voice. Do you think this is a good idea? Think it'll work? Am I missing something? So again, just take it and run with it. We are the committee.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thanks, Bill.
All right. Good, Levi. Good seeing you. Take
Yes,
care.
nice to talk to you.